The next few poses will be done in a standing position. Please move slowly and at your own pace. Keep the sturdy chair nearby for balance if needed. If you find that I'm talking faster than you are moving, please take your time and do fewer repetitions. Take a nice deep inhale and exhale. Place the feet about hips width apart and grounded on the floor. Lift the toes and spread them nice and wide and feel the navel pull gently in towards the spine. Push the toes into the floor and lean forward just a little bit. Feel the muscles that keep you steady. Lean back just a little bit and feel the toes come up. Feel the muscles that keep you steady in this position. Now push all four corners of the feet into the floor. Notice the steadiness of mountain pose. Notice how the steadiness of mountain pose feels. On the next inhale, roll the shoulders towards the ears, back and down so the shoulders are slightly open. Let the palms rest open to the side. Inhale and let the arms rise with the palms facing up. Exhale, bend at the elbows and allow the hands to come down the center line. Sink into the knees just a little. Repeat this again. Inhale, lift the arms with the palms facing up. Allow the hands and face to be relaxed. Continue with this movement at your own pace. Breathe as you move and try to coordinate the breath with the movement. On the next breath, lift the arms back over the head. Fingertips point in, palms face up. Imagine that you have candles in the palms of your hands and you do not want to spill them. Turn the fingertips so they face behind you. The palms remain up. Turn the fingertips to the side and then to the front like an offering, then out to the side walls. Breathe as you move, up to the top with the fingers facing in again, towards one another, and then forwards like an offering, then out to the side walls. Breathe as you move, up to the top with the fingers facing in again. Let's do this rotation one more time. After the second rotation, allow the hands to cascade down by the side and let them rest. Pause for one slow inhale and exhale. One more breath. Inhale, exhale. This next exercise is excellent for strengthening the spine and gently stretching the muscles of the back, front, and sides. Attempt to make the movement easeful and gentle. We will do these movements with various arm positions. The first arm position is the easiest. Please be sure to stay with the one that feels best for your body. We will demonstrate them all. Take the right hand to the waist and then the left. Roll the shoulders open. And on the exhale, lean to the right. Inhale to the center. On the exhale, lean to the left. Inhale back to the center. Roll the shoulders up back and down. And on the next inhale, gently pull the navel towards the spine. Pull the shoulder blades softly together. Get a small lift in the chin and feel a sense of lengthening through the front of the body. On the next exhale, begin to fold gently forward. It does not have to be all the way. Bend the knees slightly. Inhale and rise back to a standing position. Open the left arm to the side. Keep the elbow bent. Leave the right hand on the waist. Inhale. Exhale, lean slightly to the right, and then return back to the center. Bring the left hand down to the waist. Lift the right arm. Inhale. Exhale and lengthen to the left. Return to the center. Roll the shoulders open. Gently pull the navel in towards the spine. Pull the shoulder blades softly together. Get a small lift in the chin. Exhale and fold forward halfway. Inhale back to standing. Open the left arm again. Inhale, and on the exhale, lean to the right. Inhale and return back to the center. Place the left hand on the waist. Lift the right arm. Inhale. On the exhale, lean to the left. Inhale and return back to the center. Roll the shoulders open. Lengthen through the front of the body. Slightly pull the shoulder blades together. Get a small lift in the chin. Exhale and fold forward. Knees slightly bent. Inhale and return to standing in mountain pose. Pause for a moment. Inhale and exhale. For this warrior sequence, attempt to keep the movements gentle and relaxed. If you notice that you are struggling, move the feet closer together. Lower the arms or make the movements smaller. This pose is great for strengthening the legs, respiration, and opening the shoulders. Step the left foot forward just a few feet. The back foot points in at a 45-degree angle. The front knee bends and the hips face front if possible. Inhale, open the arms and bend at the elbows. On the exhale, bring the hands and elbows towards each other. Inhale, open the arms and push the heart softly forwards. Relax the shoulders. Exhale, bring the arms together. Inhale, open the arms to where you feel comfortable. Exhale, relax the arms inwards. Inhale, open and expand. Exhale, contract. Inhale, exhale. Bring the hands back down by the side. Return to mountain pose. One breath here. Inhale, exhale. Step the right foot forward. Take a moment, there's no rush. Ground the back foot into the floor. Bend the front knee. When you are ready, open the arms. Inhale. Exhale, bring the hands and elbows towards one another. Inhale, open the arms. This is a relaxed opening in the chest. Exhale, bring the hands and arms towards one another. Inhale, repeat again, creating spaciousness with a full inhale. Exhale, contract and relax the arms slightly. 2 more times at your own pace. Inhale, open. Exhale, close. Let the hands rest down by the side. and return back to mountain pose. Pause here for a few breaths.
Welcome back to the 30-second online episode of Peacetime, hosted every Sunday morning by Peacepoint with myself, Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, live streaming from Dhammakaya International Meditation Center in Azusa, California. Today's session will be about an hour and 10 minutes long and will consist of a 25-minute talk and 20 minutes of meditation, finishing up with 25 minutes of conclusion and news updates. Last time you saw me, we looked at purifying the mind. With the Dhamma talk today, we will continue with our exploration of living Buddhism with the topic of death and dying. As usual, this session, in case anyone out there is actually listening, I would encourage you to send in any questions you have by emailing me at peacetime.questions@gmail.com so that I can have a shot at answering those questions next time round. The remainder of this series of sessions on living Buddhism will examine possible answers to eternal questions from a Buddhist point of view. Having looked at the question, where do I go when I die, in this session, it will be easier in the sessions that follow to see how Buddhists might answer questions such as, where have I come from, who am I, and what is the meaning of life? Death is not exactly a fun conversation starter for parties. It remains taboo even in the social discourse. Fear surrounding death arises from uncertainty surrounding the experience and often results in an attitude of denial. People are afraid of talking about death in case they attract it. Unfortunately, turning to science doesn't do much to dispel the mystery, because it is one of those subjects scientists leave on the shelf, because it's very hard to collect data about it. It's not one of those subjects where you can conduct experiments very conveniently. There was a 1990s movie called Flatliners, where there were medical students who tried artificially dying for a few moments to see what it was like. But that is basically science fiction and not reality. Predominant scientific thinking on the mind-brain problem takes the position that the brain produces the mind, which produces consciousness. Therefore, consciousness should be totally and wholly dependent on the brain. Ironically, the nature of the data available to scientists on dying comes from a lot of personal testimonies which have built up over the years from people who nearly died. In the old days, if you got a serious illness, even though the doctor would try their best to save you, normally they wouldn't be greeted with very much success. For example, if you had a heart attack, then at best, a bystander might administer CPR. But nowadays, with defibrillators in most public spaces, a lot of people in the US especially find themselves at death's door, but are brought back to life again by the miracle of modern medical technology. Normally, scientifically speaking, for a person who's flatlined, their brain should no longer function. Logically, you would expect they would lose consciousness until they came round again. They shouldn't have any new knowledge or information entering their mind while they were unconscious. But it turns out that the opposite is true. A lot of people who come back to life have a lot to tell about the experiences which happened to them on the other side, during the time when they were, in inverted commas, dead. In many cases, they experience near-death experiences, or NDEs for short, which Professor Bruce Grayson, MD, of the University of Virginia, described as being characterized by thinking more clearly than ever before, even while your heart is stopped and there's no blood going to your brain, otherwise known as enhanced mental functioning, seeing the world from a vantage point outside your body, and meeting with deceased friends and relatives who you may have thought were still alive, all of which point to the possibility that a part of us survives the death of our body. Dr. Scott Haig is one of a growing number of scientists who suspect that when the brain is shutting down, especially in so-called revival cases, the mind is somehow being freed from the malfunctioning or fatally injured brain. So, while the patient's brain was unresponsive, their mind was not at all dead, but the patient was registering a lot of new information. Strangely, it's not information which is nonsense or incoherent, but in many cases it was especially clear. If it were just a few people, then maybe we could dismiss these NDEs as outliers or the work of religious fanatics. But it turns out from a Gallup poll in 1982, in this country alone, as many as 8 million adults have had this sort of experience, and that number is growing. If you include children, count NDEs worldwide, and update the figures to the present day, then you're probably looking at about 13 million separate testimonials. So, coherent experiences by people who are dead, and they can come back and they can talk about it. What is very significant is that some of their experiences are so vivid that they change to be a completely different personality as a result of their experience. From people who originally were very skeptical about everything religious, whether there would be an afterlife at all, they turned into someone who was very pious, a churchgoer or whatever, as a result of their NDE. So experiences were not just what neuroscientists would refer to as end-of-life electrical surges. Nonetheless, this doesn't answer the question of why a large number of people come back from the brink of death with the belief that there is an afterlife that they didn't have before their NDE. It means that there's something undeniable about these experiences which deserves a proper explanation. Indeed, the body of knowledge that has been collected from the testimonies of those who have experienced near-death experiences can be categorized into 3 common types of NDE. These types of experience, although they are reported all around the world, differ only in cultural context, but are otherwise identical, irrespective of nationality or religious belief. Many more such testimonies are available from the website of the International Association for Near-Death Studies. Some people believe that NDEs prove that there is life after death in a literal sense. To the more cautious, the experience is not proof, but it suggests that some aspect of human consciousness may be independent of the body and may survive physical death. For example, let's take a positive NDE of a person called Bill, who had a heaven-like experience. For him, when the bleeding wouldn't stop, he knew he was dying. He said, "I was going, but I felt totally at peace. There was a golden kind of light, brighter than the sun, but it didn't hurt my eyes. I never wanted anything as much as to go into that light, but something or somebody, it felt like my dad, who had died when I was a kid, communicated to me, 'It isn't your time. You must go back and finish what you have to do in your life.' The next thing I knew, I was slammed back into my body, and it felt like being in a wet sock, and the pain was just awful." By contrast, let's take the out-of-body NDE experience of a lady called Marilyn. She was admitted to the emergency room with a heart attack. From her perspective, the pain suddenly stopped. She reported, "All at once I just popped out of my body and floated up to the ceiling. I could see dust on the top of the light fixtures, and I thought, boy, someone's going to catch it for this. I could see doctors working on someone on the operating table, when all of a sudden I realized it was me. I mean, my body. I thought it was kind of silly that they were working so hard. My family was waiting down the hall, and I wished my kids would stop crying. I wanted to let them know that I was fine, but they couldn't hear me. and then it seems that I had to get back, that it was my job to take care of my kids, to see them grow up okay, at which point the doctors were able to revive her. Lastly, let's hear about the negative NDE of a guy called Kurt, involved in a serious car wreck. He reported that when the car stopped flipping, he thought he'd been thrown into outer space. In his words, I was alone, all by myself, out in the universe. I could hear noises, sort of like moans, and I could hear these figures and see these figures in the distance. They seemed to be people wearing some kind of robe, and they were faceless. They were in torment. I don't know why I thought that, except that it seemed that way. They were helpless and gesturing me to join them. Then I was realizing it would be like that forever. Something, I don't know what, was sending me a message, something about making a choice. I don't really remember it exactly. Being there was so horrible I can't even describe it. That was 14 years ago, and I still can't figure out what I ever did to deserve it. Apart from explaining the widespread occurrence of NDEs, a second thing which deserves comment are the differences in the nature of destination of those who have had NDEs. Some people report a destination that is pleasant. Others report a destination that is deeply frightening. The slide shows a summary of the differences. The third possibility, in cases where the afterlife destination is still unclear, after 7 days, which would be equivalent to the operating theatre version of the NDE I mentioned just now, which according to Buddhist belief in Southeast Asia would be some kind of intermediary state before allocation to a more permanent destination. It might be noted that in Tibetan tradition, such intermediate states between lives are described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead and give an alternative perspective on the process. Without going into too much detail, this session anyway, we will try in the light of these sorts of experience to give a Buddhist account for the nature of dying and also explain the differing destinations of the dying. So, according to the Buddhist view of death, the dying process is expected to go through some clearly defined stages. First of all, the patient suffers the last of their pain, and some fight in vain for their life. Their body goes limp and their heart stops. After taking their final 3 breaths, no more air flows in or out. According to most versions of Buddhist medical ethics, the loss of ability to breathe unaided marks the point of clinical death. From the point of view of the person who has died, there is a loss of ability to see, feel, or move. The deceased experiences their life flashing before them, the so-called life review or deathbed visions, seeing and re-experiencing major and trivial events of their life, coming to a conclusion about the adequacy of their life and what changes should have been made. In this connection, there's an interesting example of how quickly the life review is perceived to occur, because there's a short 1962 black and white movie called An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, where the life review is completed in the time it takes to fall to the end of a hangman's rope. So to come back to our stages in the death process, having completed the life review, the deceased's mind disconnects from their body, permanently for those who are beyond resuscitation, or they may still be connected by a thread for those who are about to experience an NDE. If the deceased still has defilements residual in their mind, the mind will leave the body via the nose, in reverse order of the 7 bases of the mind. If the deceased has no further defilements, there's a pathway into a deeper dimension within the body that will eventually lead to nirvana and no further rebirth. For those destined for rebirth, there will be an out-of-body experience or intensely powerful emotions, ranging from bliss to terror, as we have heard from the earlier NDE testimonies I've mentioned. The mind of the deceased is either immediately attracted to a realm of existence corresponding with the state of mind left at the end of their life review, or, if this is inconclusive, after a delay of up to 7 days, to an intermediary realm. So, given that death cannot be avoided, when the time comes for us or for a loved one, how can the best be made of the situation? The Buddhist ideal is to maintain a clear mind throughout the process of dying. However, there are several possible obstacles to this. A person might die in unexpected, accidental, or premature circumstances, or maybe unconsciously in their sleep. The physical trauma in the last moments of life is extreme and may affect a person's state of mind for the worse. The person dying may be attached to aspects of their physical existence. Instead of concentrating on calming the mind in their last moments, their thoughts might be anxieties about their possessions, unfinished business, or loved ones. As life flashes before a dying person and they have to face up to the unwholesome choices made in their life, it may take a lot of skill not to let the mind be clouded by regret. A person who has previously practiced meditation will be better equipped to maintain wholesome states of mind and keep the mind clear at the time of death, because many of the features of meditation practice are like a rehearsal for dying. Even if we're not yet on our deathbed, it is never too early to prepare ourselves in the cultivation of mindfulness of death. And in this respect, you might like to listen to some of the funeral homages on my YouTube page if you're interested in developing this sort of ability. The idea of being mindful of death is that we need to be ready for death at any moment. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha praised monks who reflected on death and put the Buddha's teachings into practice as if they only had the space of life left to live, equivalent to taking a final mouthful of food or a final breath. In this way, a practitioner doesn't lose touch with reality, and it allows them always to be prepared in case today is the last day of our life. Death, therefore, becomes something for which we are always prepared. Some people think it's a good idea to die in their sleep because it would be painless. Unfortunately, what happens if you're asleep in your final moments is that you lack awareness. So it's going to be a gamble as to what your final state of mind might be. Therefore, it's better to confront death awake and with full awareness. The conditions of stress experienced by a dying person are more extreme than anything they have encountered during their life. Even for an experienced meditator, it would be hard to maintain a calm mind while dying. Buddhists can help their case by trying not to lead a life in a reckless manner that leaves them vulnerable to death in unexpected, accidental, or premature circumstances. Although physical trauma in the last moments of life will be extreme, with a definite impact on your quality of mind, Buddhists should request that painkillers be used only to take the edge off the pain, rather than to sink the dying patient into an unconscious coma. Familiarity with meditation will help a person to avoid the baited hooks of attachments to life. And although sentimental goodbyes to relatives, friends, or possessions may seem superficially like a comfort to a dying person, Buddhists, on the contrary, would encourage a person to fixate on memories of good deeds performed during their life instead. A Buddhist might prefer to be alone to have the peace to withdraw into meditation rather than being kept company by distracting relatives who think they are offering comfort or an antidote to loneliness. Although it might annoy hospital caregivers, it is advantageous for a patient on their deathbed to be surrounded by objects reminding them of their faith or good things that they've done during their life, with an uplifting rather than a distracting friend at their bedside. Even when faced with life flashing before them, an experienced meditator will be able to guide them back from regrettable images, toward the more positive images in the mind that they deserve to think about. Indeed, the awareness of a recently deceased person is expected to be attracted to an afterlife state of being which matches their quality of mind at the time of death. In the words of the Pali proverb in the Vattupama Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, Citte asangalite sukati patikankha. If the mind is clear, then it will be attracted to a fortunate realm. In other words, if a person has attained a certain level of mental advancement, when disembodied at death, their mind will be attracted to a state of existence where that quality, that is a good quality, is the norm. But by the opposite token, citte sangalite dukati patikankha, if the mind is clouded, it will be attracted to an unfortunate realm. It's like a dung beetle and a butterfly trapped together in the same bottle. If they are released, the dung beetle will immediately go looking for dung, whereas the butterfly will go looking for nectar on flowers. There's nothing more than the habitual behavior of each insect required to explain the difference in their destinations. In the same way, Buddhists have no need to resort to the logic of an all-powerful creator God standing in judgment, although I will add that some judgment may take place for the 7-day cases by officiating deities in the intermediary or Yamaloka realms. You can find details of these in the Devadutta Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya to explain the differences in afterlife destination from one person to another. The relative importance of each act of karma in determining a person's afterlife destination will follow the order of precedence already mentioned in the karmic bullet 3 sessions ago. Before we come to time for meditation, let me relate a commentarial story from the Papancha Sutta, which tells us during the time of the Buddha, there lived an eminent Brahmin called Todaya. He was a very rich man, a millionaire in fact. However, he did not believe in generosity. He used to say, "If you give, then you will end up poor, so don't give anything away." He was also disrespectful towards the teachings of the Buddha. He was so stingy that he died without spending anything, so he buried all his treasure in a secret place without telling anybody. But he was so attached to his riches that after death he was reborn as a, wait for it, a dog in his own former house. So here comes the story. One day the Buddha went to the house in question and the dog saw him and barked at him. And the Buddha replied, "Oh, Todaya, you showed me disrespect when you were a human being, and even now you still show disrespect by barking at me. Be careful unless you go to an even worse rebirth, such as the hell realms." The dog could understand what the Buddha was saying and thought, "Oh, this monk Gotama is onto me." And he was so distressed that he went and curled up on an ash heap. The person who had inherited the house was Todaya's son, named Supa, who those of you who've studied the Julagama Vibhanga Sutta will recognize as Todaya Buddha. The dog was Supa's favorite pet. He had made a special sleeping place for the dog, but when he saw the dog had gone on to the ash heap instead, Supa knew that the Buddha must have said something to upset the dog. So he went to the Buddha and asked him about it. The Buddha told him what happened, but Supa thought to himself, "According to the teachings of the Brahmins, my father should have been reborn in the Brahma realms, not as a dog. The Buddha must be wrong." So he went back to the Buddha to argue with him, but the Buddha asked him whether or not there were some riches not disclosed by his father, and Supa replied that indeed a great deal of money was missing and had not been disclosed by his father. The Buddha advised him to feed the dog late at night near bedtime and then asked the dog where the riches were. Supa thought that if what the Buddha said were true, he would recover the riches, but if what he said were false, he could accuse the Buddha of perjury. Supa fed the dog at bedtime and asked the dog about the undisclosed riches. The dog got up and took him to the place where the treasure was buried. Supa dug up the treasure and recovered it. So this is an example of a person's habitual stinginess causing them to be reborn in the animal realm, but retaining memories of their previous human lifetime. So in order that we don't become too morbid, considering the topic of today's talk, we should take a break halfway through for some meditation. So at this time, we settle ourselves down for 20 minutes of meditation. If you would like to find a comfortable sitting position for yourself now as you listen to my guidance. So as usual, I hope you found a comfortable sitting position for yourself. You can sit on a sofa or on a chair, or you can sit on a meditation mat on the floor. The point is, you should try to relax. And distance yourself from any kind of distractions. If you're sitting on the floor, try to sit cross-legged, with your right leg over the left one, the right hand over the left hand, palms turned upwards, and adjust your hands so that the tip of the right index finger touches the thumb of the left hand. And then sit upright in a relaxed manner. If you're sitting on a chair or a sofa, just relax yourself. And it's best to avoid leaning against the backrest because you may fall asleep too easily. So adjust your sitting position until you feel completely at ease. And now breathe in gently and deeply before breathing out a couple of times. When you breathe in, feel your chest expanding and your back straightening. When you breathe out, let go of any negativity or problems along with the out-breath. Also allow your shoulders to drop naturally. Again, you breathe in, taking the cool, refreshing air into your lungs, feeling refreshed. And after a few times, you'll feel ready for the meditation ahead. So now comes the most important part of relaxation. Close your eyes gently and allow your eyelashes to touch gently together. Close your eyes no more tightly than that. Your eyelids should feel as light as a feather. And as you relax all the muscles around your eyes, you'll find that because the muscles around your eyes are the most sensitive part of your body, if you relax those muscles, then all the other muscles throughout the body will become relaxed as well. Now allow the relaxation from around the eyes to spread throughout your face. Put a little smile on your face before relaxing the muscles of your forehead, your cheeks, your chin. Allow them all to become fully relaxed. Allow the relaxation to spread down your neck to the shoulders. Relax your shoulders, both arms, to your hands and all the way to your fingertips. Then relax the whole of your body, down to your legs, feet and toes. Examine each part of the body. If you feel any discomfort in any part of your body or resulting from your posture, then make an adjustment now so the blood can circulate freely throughout your body and to minimize any aches or pains during the meditation. To the point that you feel you could sit like this for as long as you like. Know that your body is totally relaxed, and imagine that your body is light in weight and hollow like a tube, with no internal organs, just hollow and light, as if your body is floating in the air, as if your body is now expanding. It is light, and it's expanding to the horizon, as if your whole body is merging with the atmosphere around you. Little by little, your body is disappearing until you no longer feel the physical body anymore. So now it's time to relax the mind. Normally our mind is filled with so many thoughts, so many worries. So let's put every thought to one side, so that you're left with an empty mind, like a person with no future and no past. You have only the present moment and the here and now. Imagine that you're sitting all alone in a vast empty space. All around you is nothing and no one. And if your mind drifts away into some thoughts, then let the thoughts settle and remain in this silence for a few moments. Now breathe in slowly and make a mental note of the turning point of the breath inside your stomach. Once you've taken note, then just forget about your breath. The turning point of the breath in your stomach is the center of the body, which is where we're going to rest our attention. We're going to place the awareness at this point, because it's right here in the center of the stomach. In practice, it doesn't matter where exactly we place our mind at this stage, but once our mind is calm and refined enough, the mind will zero in on the center of the body by itself. When the mind begins to settle at that point, you will feel that something is almost alive at the center of the body. And for the time being, just rest the mind gently in the general area of the center of your stomach, at the point you feel most comfortable with. The way you place the mind at the center of the body is as gentle as if you were floating a needle on the surface of some water, creating not a single ripple on the surface of that water, while also not letting the needle sink. That's how you're going to place the mind at the center of the body, very gently. And to help keep your mind in place, you can picture the image of the sun shining in your mind. The same sort of sun you might see if you were walking at the seaside and saw the sun on the horizon, shining bright, clear and round. Visualize without making any effort, because it is the natural ability of the mind to picture things internally. Whenever we think of anything, a picture of that thing will arise in our mind. That's the way we visualize. So the shining sun is at the center of our body, and we'll continue to rest our awareness there with the inner sun at the center of our body the whole of the time. And in order to dispel any thoughts that return to our mind, we do our best to ignore them. If this doesn't cut it for us, we can make use of the traditional mantra Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang. The sound of the mantra comes from the center of the shining sun. The sound of the mantra is soft, tender, and soothing to the mind. In our mind there are only two things, the sun shining bright and clear, and the mantra Samma Arahang coming up from the center of the shining sun. Repeat the sound of the mantra in a gentle and unhurried way, effortlessly. We repeat the mantra for as long as we need to, and at a certain point in time the mantra will fade away of its own accord. If you start to feel the mind is calm and doesn't wander anymore, you don't have to restart with the mantra again. Just rest the awareness at the center of the shining sun. But if you notice that the sun is drifting away into random thoughts, you just gently bring it back to the center of the shining sun. You may need to restart the mantra, and this is how you cultivate the mind to become calmer and calmer. The longer you can rest the mind gently at the center of the body, the more refined our mind will become. Little by little becoming calmer and calmer, more and more refined, softer and more peaceful. So let's enjoy the moment of peacefulness in the mind for a few moments longer in silence. The light from the sun is soothing as if there were a touch-sensitive switch at the center of the body. When we touch this switch gently, it turns on the light, the inner light. The light of the inner sun is always there, just like the sun that is forever behind the clouds, even when we're unable to see it. The origin of the light in our mind is just the same. It is blocked by any impurities in our mind, so that we may never know that there is a light source at the center of our body. But through meditation we can gradually remove the impurities from the mind, allowing the light of the inner sun to shine through, brighter and clearer than before. So rest the mind at the center of the body, gently and continuously. We just continue to rest the mind like this, gently, softly, tenderly. The shining sun is getting brighter and brighter. It's becoming more soothing to the mind. We can feel the relaxation. We can feel the inner peace flowing out from the center of the body. Resting the mind at the center of the shining sun, gently and continuously. Never use any pressure, never use any force. Maintain the mind at the center of the shining sun within. And let the stream of peacefulness, the stream of happiness flow forth from the center of the body. In essence, our task is very simple, just resting the mind at the center of the body and observing what's happening. Whatever happens, we are just a neutral observer, just as if from a bus window we were keeping track of the country scenery. And the scenery may keep changing, but we just keep watching anyway, watching passively. The longer we can gently rest the mind at the center of the body, the more refined it will become. And the mind will start to journey inward all by itself. The refined mind will journey inward into the center of the center. And it will get more and more refined until you can start to feel deep happiness from within, flowing forth, cleansing the body and the mind. We can feel that both our body and mind are becoming more pure, as if by a special kind of energy from within. We can feel that the mind is expanding with that purity from within, while the mind makes a journey inward of its own accord while being a neutral observer. Continue to rest the mind at the center of the body, and the happiness from within feels joyful, refreshed, and energized. We feel awakened and alive, with the awareness resting at the center of the body. And we share this kind of happiness with all the people around us, spreading the loving kindness and happiness from within to everyone around us. Resting the mind at the center of the body, but spreading loving kindness outward into the atmosphere, purifying the atmosphere further and further in all directions, wishing all beings be happy, spreading that loving kindness further, wishing all beings, whether human or non-human alike, be happy, live in peace and harmony. Further outwards to cover the whole world, wishing all the people of the world be happy, to be free from suffering, free from illness, spreading the loving kindness further out into space to all the stars and all the galaxies, filling the whole universe with loving kindness and happiness from the center of our body. And you might like to think of loved ones who have already passed away, maybe ancestors or grandparents, wherever they have been reborn. We make the wish that they be happy, wish for them to have the opportunity to discover the same inner peace and happiness that we are now experiencing. We share loving kindness and happiness for the benefit of our family members, wishing them all to be happy. We continue to make good wishes for ourselves and others, while spreading loving kindness for a few more moments in silence. สัพพพุทธานุภาเวนะสัพพธัมมานุภาเวนะสัพพสังฆานุภาเวนะสัทธาโสธีภวันตุเท So if you'd like to come to the end of your meditation for today, you can gradually open your eyes again. If you feel at all uncomfortable, then slowly try changing to a more comfortable position before gently finishing your practice. So to return to our topic of death and dying, so as not to overwhelm you with detail, I should explain that there are three main types of traject after death: rebirth in fortunate realms, rebirth in unfortunate realms, and no further rebirth in other words, going to nirvana. Where it is a toss-up between rebirth in fortunate or an unfortunate realm, you can sometimes also elaborate on this to include out-of-body experiences and those intermediate realms I mentioned earlier. If anyone saw the 1990 movie Ghost, what happens when people die is that one's going to a fortunate realm, have a brightness, and heavenly hosts come and take them away. If they're going to an unfortunate realm, then all the shadows come and drag them away, kicking and screaming to a place they don't want to go. As for others who haven't gone one way or the other, then they're floating around mixed up with humans, but humans can't see them or hear them. In fact, the person who directed that movie must have had some inkling of the Buddhist understanding of the death process. But in fact, in reality, it's more complex than the movie depicts. Usually when a person dies, if they have a predominance of good karma, then immediately they are off to a new, better realm known as the heaven realm. If they have a predominance of bad karma, then they don't need to hang around and wait for shadows to come to take them away, kicking and screaming. Already the power of their own bad karma is enough to pull their mind immediately to a more unpleasant realm of existence. It's only the borderline cases which are still hanging around, and they only get to hang around for 7 days in the human realm, a length of time which is not specified in the scripture, but which is traditionally understood in Southeast Asia. It's said that they give you 7 days grace period to think of something good you've done. If after 7 days you still can't think of anything good you've done to allow your mind to become pure and to go to somewhere better, then they come and drag you kicking and screaming to an intermediary realm, which in English Buddhists would call purgatory or yamaloka. And then from purgatory there are a variety of possible destinations, better or worse, for you to go to. These three trajects can be elaborated in more detail to give the 5 fairings or gati, as shown on the slide. On the fortunate side, we have the human realm and the heaven realms. On the unfortunate side, we have the hell realms, animal realms, and the realm of hungry ghosts or beta. The 5 fairings can be further elaborated into realms of existence, which you will find in the Abhidhammata Sangaha, or the Thai textbook called The 3 Worlds according to King Ruang, which cover the full variety of karmic combinations born in the mind of those seeking rebirth. Since the variety of karma performed by beings during their life is diverse, to say the least, there are corresponding shades of difference in the afterlife destinations. Just as last time I described 3 planes of mental states, or pumi, the sense plane, the form plane, and the formless plane, there will be 3 equivalent spheres of existence, or bhava: the sense sphere, the form sphere, and the formless sphere, equivalent to those states of mind. Here the equivalent is shown in the form of a pagoda, which in this case is a model of the Buddhist cosmos. This pagoda is not just a pagoda for decoration, It's a pagoda which is a representation of the different realms of existence. In fact, there are 31 realms of existence, based on the 5 fairings I mentioned just now. If you look at the pagoda, here the human realm is depicted as a bell shape, and it's equivalent to the humane state of mind, which is a state of mind of a person who keeps 5 precepts at the minimum. They can find themselves reborn again almost immediately in the human realm. And it's possible, when you hear about reincarnations of Tibetan lamas, for example, that this process would be the explanation. Below the humans, you have 4 unfortunate realms: animals, hungry ghosts, monsters, and the bedrock of hell. Above the bell-shaped human realm, we have a group of 6 realms, which are the heaven realms, like heavens where angels live. And above the heaven realms, we have another set of 16 form Brahma realms, which are equivalent to the form Brahma plane, so realms of gods. And above the form Brahma plane, there's another 4 realms, which are the formless Brahma realms, equivalent to the formless Brahma plane. The circle on the very top, which is broken free of this whole system, is nirvana itself. And it's not a heaven, it's outside the system of samsara completely. So don't go thinking it's just a continuation of the formless Brahma realms. It is a place where beings have broken free from rebirth. And I'll show you some artist impressions in the next session to flesh out this cosmological scheme of the 31 realms of existence. So that's for next session. So as usual, remembering all the details of death and dying is not as important as the reflections we take away from our new knowledge. And today I'd like to leave you with 4 reflections on the materials we've studied today, on why rebirth is not widely believed in the West, on the difference between rebirth and reincarnation, and the idea of not-self, the importance of meditation in palliative care, and in preparing ourselves for death, and the special danger of attachment to rebirth. So let's start with the question of why, if rebirth is so obvious, it is not more widely believed in the Western world. Part of the reason is, for doctrinal purposes, that the teaching of rebirth has been suppressed in biblical literature. At least this was the case after the reign of Constantine the Great. With the finalization of the scriptures to be included in the Bible, the doctrine of transmigration, as preached by the Gnostics, was decreed to be heretical and received criticism from Greek philosophers such as Hippolytus and Irenaeus. In fact, the main problem for Christians with the concept of rebirth seemed to be that they didn't see animals as sentient beings. If human beings could occasionally be reborn as an animal, it devalued human spiritual worth in the eyes of God. Before Constantine, the doctrine of rebirth was not so alien to Western thinking as some might assume. In the early days of Christianity, according to some of the apocryphal or non-biblical scriptures and the biblical commentaries, rebirth of the soul was accepted until about 280 CE. In the Gnostic tradition, which emphasized inner insight as the main source of revelation, they found no difficulty in fitting reincarnation into their plan for salvation. Far from thinking of reincarnation as alien to gospel teaching, they elaborately interpreted certain of the most striking details in this sense and gave graphic details about how Jesus, as the first mystery, brought to rebirth the souls of John the Baptist and of the disciples, and then supervised the economy of his own incarnation. In this respect, the Great Seth scriptures offer richer material for those interested in this ancient and widespread doctrine than can be found in any other Old World document in the West. Gnostic teachings, like Buddhist ones, have regarded reincarnation as a calamity to be overcome by liberation. The second reflection is on a linguistic difference between the terms rebirth and reincarnation. Buddhists tend to use the word rebirth to describe the continuity from life to life. It indicates that the individual that is reborn between one life and the next might not be the same in nature, but will have a quality which will differ according to the actions that they have most recently performed. Buddhists generally take exception to the concept of a substantial self or atta, to the extent that denial of self is included in the three universal signs of existence. Hindu tradition, by contrast, uses the word reincarnation, which indicates that a person reborn has an unchanging character or soul, but the new form of being at birth might change to be a frog or a cat or an elephant, just like a new set of clothes, but the soul is still the same. On a connected issue, some scholars say that to avoid getting into the Hindu idea of the soul, Buddhists must not accept the idea of something continuing from one lifetime to the next without conflicting with the Buddhist idea of anatta. Such scholars generally explain that a person's karma or consciousness is transmitted from lifetime to lifetime in the same way as one candle would be lit from another, a new flame caused by the last, but sharing none of its former essence. Such scholars translate the word anatta as no self. In the Dhammakaya tradition, however, we translate the word anatta as not self, which implies that everything which is made up of physical aggregates, anything short of the bodies of enlightenment, is not self, so we should not be attached to it. By saying it is not self, it implies that there must be something which really is self. It is the same as when we might say something is non-human. It implies there must be something which is truly human to compare it to. In our case, we'd say that the reason that we should not be attached to this physical body is because it's going to break down. It's of a nature of suffering and it's impermanent. So if we become attached to it, then it will bring us suffering in the future because we cannot hang on to it forever. However, the reason we say this is because there is an alternative, which is a body which is beyond suffering and impermanence. It's of a nature of permanence, in other words, eternal, and is also of a nature of happiness, not the nature of suffering. This is the body of enlightenment. So you could say that this is one's true self, but in fact it's not your self, it's not myself, but it is true self, which goes beyond individual people. So we would say that translating the word anatta as a no self is a mistranslation, and such a mistranslation fuels philosophical confusion about not existing. The important thing is only to make a distinction between the part of us which is not permanent, mundane, or lokiya, not enlightened, and the part of us which is transcendental or lokutara, enlightened, full of wisdom and knowledge, and of a nature to enter upon nirvana. The important thing is to be able to tell the difference between these two parts of ourself, which are so completely different in nature. In this way, we can protect ourselves against confusing our true self with our ego. The word anatta should point to the fact that there's something better than our mundane self, which is the potential to attain the body of enlightenment in ourselves. It's not that we're going to become attached to the idea of a higher self, because it's not of a nature of something which you can become attached to, but it is like a skillful ambition or chanta, which will lead us towards salvation. So we turn now to examine the importance of meditation in palliative care. Since death is one of the few certain things about human life, Buddhists consider meditation in preparation for death to be one of the most important things to master during the period they are still alive. Meditation can help a dying person cope with the pain, attachments, and their life review, and help maintain peace of mind. Similarly, when a Buddhist must take care of the dying, if they can teach the person in their care to meditate in the last moments of their lives, or if they can be an uplifting friend to remind them continuously of the good things they've done in their lives, it may be one of the most enduring gifts that they can give to that dying person. In this connection, I'd like to tell a true story of a 52-year-old woman suffering from cancer who came to see a monk from our temple. She had breast cancer and had had an operation to cure it in Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, after the operation, she lacked follow-up for about 2 years. And in the meantime, the cancer had metastasized throughout her body. It was everywhere, in her spinal cord and in her bones, in her lungs, in her intestines, and in her brain too. She was very upset and couldn't cope with any sort of stress. If anyone annoyed her, she would smash things around the house. Whenever she was alone in a dark room, she imagined she was being stalked by evil spirits. Whenever she fell asleep, she would have nightmares about dead people trying to persuade her to go and stay with them. Life was total misery for her. This lady was one of the patients to whom the monk was able to teach meditation, and he taught her a simple technique which lasted no longer than 15 minutes. At first, she couldn't meditate very well. However, she felt a little bit more peaceful and found she could maintain her concentration. Even so, she found that the meditation was a refuge for her. After going home that night, she started immediately to meditate more seriously. She meditated sitting motionless for 2 hours, and the following morning she phoned the monk. She said that this was the greatest time of her life. She said that she had never experienced such happiness before. It was difficult to believe that this patient, who was suffering from such a terrible disease, could be able to say this. The other doctors had predicted that the lady would have only 2 months left to live. Meanwhile, the monk continued to teach the lady to progress in her meditation over the phone. The lady's meditation made a vast improvement because every time her mind slipped away from the center of the body, all the pain would start to come back again. So even the slightest fraction of a hairbreadth away from the center of the body, and immediately she could feel that her mind was not in place. So in the last few days of her life, she got to meditate very well indeed because the pain was helping her to find the center of the body as a way to escape from the pain. Her mind was firmly established at the center, meditating the whole time. And as a consequence, her face looked bright and clear. No one would have guessed that she had such a terrible disease. And she lived for a further 4 months, contrary to the doctor's prognosis. This was 6 months of happiness for her. And she passed away quietly and peacefully in hospital. All the doctors and nurses came to see her, and they were all touched emotionally because it was such a happy death. The lady was actually smiling as she passed away. The monk never taught her anything about Buddhism. He just taught her the basics of meditation in order to offer solace in the face of her disease. And this illustrates how meditation on the deathbed can lead to a good and dignified death, and if Buddhist beliefs are correct, also to go to the good place in the afterlife. So if you can be the person to lead one of the patients who are in pain to use meditation as their refuge, this is a very big merit for you as well as for the patient. But of course, to learn meditation in advance of your illness is much better, because you already have that familiarity with the meditation since the time you were healthy. Most people don't do very well if they are beginners in meditation on their deathbed, so it's better for us to rehearse well in advance. So, as for the last reflection for today, I would like to talk about the special danger of attachment to rebirth. Buddhists believe that even if a person manages to be reborn in heaven, that they are still somehow imprisoned in the cycle of rebirth. The perils of the cycle of rebirth, old age, sickness and death, and unexpiated bad karma can only be avoided by escaping the cycle of rebirth completely. Thus, although life is valuable and at times even enjoyable, Buddhists emphasize that one should not become complacent in attachment to those comforts or shirk the task of freeing oneself from the cycle of existence. However, escaping completely from samsara may take many lifetimes, so it's best to have a long-term plan. In conclusion, this session has examined the Buddhist version of where people go when they die. In a couple of sessions' time, we will look at the opposite side of the transition between human life and death by asking where people come from before they are born. But before we do that, the next session will be more of a metaphysical slideshow to flesh out the 5 fairings to the full spectrum of the 31 realms. So we come to the time in our live stream where we can open up to questions set in by viewers in advance. And a question today comes from Pat of Glendora, California. Do defilements begin at an early age within our family dynamics? If so, how early on? Hi Pat, and thank you for your question. I think I mentioned in the session you heard called Rust in the Mind that defilements are basically the residue of bad habits. Having more defilements in the mind will feed back into worse life choices in the future. I realize now, though, that I didn't explain the origins very clearly. Of course, by residue of bad habits, it means that defilements come from choices in our past. In the past might mean our childhood, but it still comes down to our own choices. For example, if your parents brought you up in severe poverty, you might be tempted to steal. However, it is whether you act on those temptations that lays down the defilements in your mind that are going to come back to haunt you in the future. Some people like to blame all their woes on their parents or their upbringing, but this is too simplistic, and it is really passing the buck when we need to take responsibility for our own actions. It is useless to blame our parents, particularly this session when we have seen that we have some part in choosing our own parents. So putting the entire blame on our parents is not helpful for anyone. What we also learned today is that the origins of defilements can go back to before we were born, to concern the choices we made in previous lifetimes. In accordance with the 90-10 split I talked about earlier, it is likely that 90% of any person's defilements are latencies that are carried over from previous lifetimes. And that is why we have no way to remember the origin of those defilements. So to conclude, some defilements may come from our own choices in childhood, but not from our parents. But most of them come to us from previous lifetimes. Before today, let me finish up with a quick mention about temple support and a news update about the availability of meditation teaching in English. Those of you who like to visit the temple in Azusa to bring offerings, please be informed that we are still using the offering site in the parking lot next to the main temple building between 10 and 11 a.m. each day. If you have trouble with the passcode or at the gate or wish to visit at a different time, please call Jenny on 562-716-2961. There will be at least one monk on standby in PPE to receive your offering and give you a short blessing. English-speaking monks will be on duty on most weekdays. A short ceremony for 5 precepts, meditation and a blessing are given on the weekends starting at 10:45 a.m. And for those unable to visit in person, all the other ways of accepting money transfers to the IMC are still available, whether it be mailing checks, bank transfer, Zelle, or Venmo. Needless to say, the whole temple would like to rejoice in the merits of all continuing to take the opportunity to support the temple in this way. Meditation continues to be valuable in tackling lockdown fatigue, and in this respect, despite the relegation to the yellow tier here at the temple, we are still in a position where we have no face-to-face teaching sessions for the interim. You can, however, continue to access Dhamma teachings in English through several convenient channels. aficionados of Zoom meetings, you can access the Inner Peace channel content by joining the Zoom channel ID 970-1192-2337, meeting passcode 072, and as you will see from the updated program schedule on the slide, content is available for most of the day now, 7 days a week, and brings together all the usual programming from our temple with the English and Spanish content from various branches across the US. The times shown on this particular slide are for the West Coast. For content local to Azusa, you can continue to follow teachings at the YouTube channel called Peace Point Meditation or the Facebook page of Peace Point Meditation. For those of you who are particularly interested in my talks, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, which I have set up in my own name. And according to the current Peace Point schedule, every Sunday morning you have got me with live material and archived material on alternating Sundays. Venerable Sopon appears every Thursday evening. The Monday and Friday Peace Silence sessions from Peace Point have been postponed for the interim owing to even more teacher monks being away in Thailand. Families listening in may be interested in the special show for children in English known as Shining Stars that goes out between 6 and 6:30 p.m. every Monday evening with bedtime stories and meditation short enough to keep the attention of younger listeners. Outside of the live streams and on-demand programming, you can also download the MindGem app for free, allowing you to listen to meditation and Dhamma talks in English on your cell phone, even when you are offline. It now has push notifications to keep you up to date with upcoming activities on the Inner Peace channel. So this session we have looked at the topic of death and dying. For my next live session with you, which will, fingers crossed, be a week on Sunday morning, we'll be moving on to look at something along the lines of 31 realms of existence. For good measure, I would like to remind viewers you can email your questions about meditation or what you've heard in the lecture to the email address that you can see spelled out in the slide, and I will do my best to answer these on my next session. In the meantime, try to stay healthy, avoid recklessness or complacency in the face of the virus, maintain a positive mood, speak only positive words, forgive others, extend good wishes to others, and meditate daily. Hopefully, as the result of today's session, you will have a less fear of death yourself and see the importance of meditation in preparing yourself for the inevitable, while valuing yourself in the role of the uplifting friend when you are at the bedside of relatives or loved ones who are at the end of their lives. So for today, this is me, Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, signing off for this session. So long, folks, and stay safe.